Before we start our board meeting, we usually have a public comment period. And as a rule, that public comment period is about 15 minutes, but I see that we have a lot of interested people, so I'm going to extend that to 20 minutes. We, as a board here, are very much aware of the information that was presented at the public hearing. We've had many emails with that same information. So I would ask you to really honor this 20 minutes by presenting to us new information, new things that we can hear. We also ask you to approach this podium here, state your name and your address before you start. And I think in the interest of fairness, I will ask for, I will alternate between people who are for this land use amendment change and those who are not, until there aren't any alternate ones, and then we'll just continue on. I have some information for the board, a change. Our visually impaired people who watch these meetings don't always know who's speaking. So what we have been asked to do, and this is not just for this meeting, but from now on, when you have a question or you want to say something, please say your name first. So
Okay.
I would say, Podolsky calls the meeting to order, or whatever. Then the visually impaired people know who's talking. So that's a change that we're making today. So I will now ask, um, is there anyone here who would like to make public comment?
There's a list.
Or there's a list. Did you get, is that,
I'm sure there's a question evidently about procedure.
I'm getting texts from people
Can't hear you.
tune in remotely and are having trouble getting in.
We cannot hear you.
Can't hear
hear
you.
you, ma'am?
I'm getting messages from people who are trying to tune in remotely and are having trouble getting in.
Is that through the Teams app or?
It's available.
Yeah, there's some questions on it. I think that's maybe we let people.
It looks like they're all in right now.
Is there any limit?
I think your text may be a little out of obsolete at the moment. It looks like everyone has been let in that wanted to.
Yeah, there's two ways to link in, and one is through the county board website, and one is through the agenda. You can both see it, but you can only participate if you link in through the agenda piece. How
Okay.
I worked it before, but you can still view it from either site, right?
Okay, so the suggestion is to link in through the agenda. I think your text may be a little out of.
If there's anybody still texting that they haven't gotten in, they should try it again. They might have tried while we were switching between meetings, and there may not have been someone there to let them in, so.
Can you say that louder?
Sure. If somebody tried to get in like right before this meeting started, we might have still been in the last meeting, and so there may not have been someone to like electronically let them in. So if they want to try again, everybody that's trying right now is in, but we're here to let them in if they want to try again.
Link into the agenda. And Lisa, a list of speakers, you have that to a physical list for me? Great.
So we run out of time, huh?
Say that. Pardon me?
We run out of time.
Till we run out of time, yes. Okay. The first person listed here is Michael Melford. Okay, so we'll come back to him. The next person is Sita Goyal. The speakers, you have that physical list for me? Great.
So we run out of time, huh?
Pardon me?
Oh, just let people.
We run out of time, yes. Okay. The first person listed here is Michael Melford.
I don't see them here.
Okay.
They aren't showing up.
Lynn.
Sita's here, I think.
Sita is here? Is that Sita? Sita, please give us your name and address and.
Hi, my name is Sita Goyal. My address is 1620 West Center Street. I have been a lifelong Rochesterite, and I grew up here. I spent what little of my adulthood there has been. Um, and I think that spaces like the Rookery are what makes Rochester really special. That's what attracts me to Rochester. And I think it would really be a shame to lose such an incredible resource. I also believe that um, this sentiment is echoed in the Olmsted County General Land Use Plan. I believe it's on page 12, where it states that it is the job of the county to preserve the natural and cultural resources that provide a sense of place for the county. Olmsted County contains human-made and natural physical features that distinguish it from other communities. Such features include historic, geologic, hydrologic, biological, and ecological features combined in a landscape that the community recognizes as significant. I believe that the community has, in their rallying of support behind the Rookery, shown that this is um, a resource that's incredibly significant to the community. We've had upwards of 4,700 people interact with our website. Um, we have a Facebook group of over 800 people, and we've had 1,400 people sign our petition. Um, Furthermore, the Rookery has had a lot of press garnered. It's been covered by the Star Tribune, the Post Bulletin, NPR, KIMT, KTTP, and the Med City Beat. I also think that we should look to the judgments of renowned experts, such as the former head of the Minnesota DNR Non-Game and Wildlife Division, Carol Henderson, as well as Dr. Bonnie Plodger, who is a professor of biology at Hamline University, who has extensively studied great blue herons and great blue heron nesting sites, who both of them have visited the Rookery and have determined it to be a significant wildlife and scientific resource. I guess I know that initially, when decisions were made regarding this plot of land, only a select few were aware of the Rookery. But now that we as a community have garnered support and really feel passionate about this Rookery, I think it would be a tragedy to change the designation of the land from a protected resource to a suburban development. And I also believe that, according to the language stated from the General Land Use Plan, it would be adverse to the intent of the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here who wants to speak in favor of the change of land use plan? Excuse me, who wants to speak?
Mr. Brower.
Yeah,
Be the only one.
you may be.
You were most likely the
Okay,
only one.
you want to pass then?
No, I want to reserve the time with the.
Well, you have 2 to 3 minutes.
We'll keep it short. Jeff Broberg, 11596 Persons Drive. I'm one of the representatives of the development. I'm representing Blue Line Environmental Advisors. Been working on this a long time. A year ago, we were here virtually. Rochester Township had made the application for a land use plan amendment to take it out of the urban service area. And our clients decided to ask to delay that till we could have an in-person meeting. This is the first one since that time, and I'm happy to be here without a mask today. It's been quite a long haul of going through virtual meetings. But in that time, the land use plan development was petitioned by the city of Rochester and went through a whole series of approvals, and really going back to 2014 and 2015, when the township had to condemn a piece of land to provide road access. This was a landlocked parcel, and there were some survey problems in that section, and they provided the access from Boulder Creek so that there would be a single road access into this site. 2019, Steve Conley went to the township asking them to support the land use plan amendment to suburban, which is a two-step process, potential suburban and then suburban, away from urban service area. And just at this time last year, we received the city sewer study that showed this entire area to be urbanized. This area was designated to be 48% of the land at a density of 4 units per acre. And this was one of my motivations because it would have required complete land clearing. You can't get those kinds of densities. Look around Rochester at the places that used to have woods, and you can't get that kind of density. So we were happy that we were doing some environmental preservation. That was approved by the county board here in November of 2020. The second step moved forward with the landowners making the application for the final second step of the land use plan amendment from potential suburban to suburban, and that's where we're at here today. And in 2021, Rochester Township voted to support the second step. That was the first place we started hearing conflicts with the neighbors. And the first thing we heard was a litigious request for a driveway and a threat over a potential property line dispute. And we first learned of those in January and February of this year. It was moving from the township. They were aware of some of these, recommended approval, received unanimous approval recommendation from the Planning Commission, and brought us here. It was February 5th was the first time that I heard of the birds, that our development team heard of the rookery. So a relatively new issue, but we went right into full-scale mode of investigation and looking at what was needed to deal with this issue, and found they're not threatened, they're not endangered, they don't have any special concern status. There's rules and regulations about how to deal with nesting habitat for birds. And it was reported that there were potential nesting colonies in 12 townships in Olmsted County from the Breeding Bird Atlas that was done in 2013 to 2015. These are not rare birds. It's not common type of habitat where you find them, so they're poorly studied. They're often found more in wetland environments or environments where there's big lakes or islands. That's not the case throughout southeastern Minnesota. The other rookeries I know of that have herons are in upland sites near trout streams, not that dissimilar from an upland site near Cascade Creek. They nest near their food sources. That's what drives them. What happened behind the scenes, I think, is even more revealing. And I'll wrap this up quick. 10 different contacts from the opponents on this issue without ever talking to the owner about these birds. It started with attorneys threatening about the driveway, about the land use dispute, about property conflicts. And it brought in third parties with becoming litigious and threatening that if we don't do something to protect the birds, we're going to trowel out the tree huggers in the press. And the next context we see are long interviews in the press. We see a temporary restraining order filed with the court. We had to go through a trial. We're in the process of dealing with a petition and have agreed to do an EAW and bring in third-party experts to do this review so that we can move forward and do the right thing. We wanted to do a plan that took into account for the birds, and we were thwarted from going on the property by a temporary restraining order. Our surveyors were literally kicked off. That's what's going on behind the scenes here. I'm going to leave it to you to think of the motivations of what's happened. I'm going to ask you to take the staff reports and take the assurance that the township is capable of dealing with these issues in the future. So I'm asking for your support today for the land use plan amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Broberg. Did Michael Melford ever make a contact?
He was able to join, he says. He just wasn't sure if he could speak, but he's able to watch it. I don't know if you...
Okay, I don't know what to do then for him. If he's not able to speak to us, it won't help.
Well, how is your system working? Are people able to...
Yep, he's not in the right place. he's on the view only, where you can just
Oh.
watch it, where you can't interact. He's not on the link that
Okay.
will let him in.
Well, he could call and then speak.
Let's
The
let
time
him do
available.
that, and we'll move on here. So, Lynn Cornell?
That's me.
Oh, that's you too. Okay. Did you want to speak?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we not need to wear our masks?
Oh.
I believe
Not.
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird.
We're maskless.
I'm Lynn Cornell. I live at 5510 Heather Drive, Southwest in Rochester Township. So, as you know, in December 2020, before I learned about this rookery, the county board had approved a request by the township board to change the designation of this property. And then, as we heard at the April 6th commissioners meeting, Elliot Moeller from the Olmstead County Planning Department said that the staff findings of fact regarding this LUPA and the general development plan proposal were completed prior to the time that they learned the rookery existed and prior to the time that the public learned that this existed. The recommendation for approval was also made prior to the time that we learned the rookery existed. So I request that the county ask the Planning and Zoning Committee to go back and reassess based on this new information. And I also recommend that you deny the LUPA recommendation and ask that they go back and gather the information again that's needed to make a recommendation. So I encourage you to vote no on this LUPA considering this new information, and also with the discovery of this great blue heron rookery that clearly has been of great importance to the public.
Thank you. Anna Flope?
Yeah, it's Fulp. That's
Fulp.
what we get you every time. Hello.
Sorry.
Thank you for the chance to speak. I'll be brief because I know there are lots of people who have other things they'd like to say, and I regaled you with a long email in the wee hours of the morning. I live at 1135 East Weatherhill Drive Southwest. Some of you, I know Mark has been to my house to work on my well. You probably remember it years ago. And I just wanted to add that my entry into this process was because as a runner and a dog walker in my neighborhood, I knew of the woods. And then in April, there was an email that went out saying that the trees were going to be cut down for road access on a weekend. And my tree company was going to do it, but it wasn't really authorized. So I was really alarmed about that, and I texted Rick Cordy. Fortunately, the trees weren't cut down. So there were a lot of things that were going on, as you were saying, behind the scenes. And I don't really have anything to add to my email. There are many other folks who would like to speak, but I would just like to say that for years I've wondered about this property and also wondered about the rapid development of the area and whether or not we can take a more measured approach. And I think that given what we now know about the value of the property and the unusual nature of this colony, and also in general the woods, we really should proceed more slowly and consider that the LUPA should be put aside or revisited with more information, because there's a lot of available property for development. A lot of it is farm fields that are already cleared, but nothing in the county has this unique colony of birds or unique ecosystem. So thanks for your consideration, and I'm really happy to see so many people here supporting, I think, an environmental lens, perhaps that we haven't used before for these kinds of projects.
Thank you.
So I'm looking at the list here, and we are running out of time. Is there anyone on this list who has some new information for us? Yes, you are. Yes, please.
Hi, my name's Corey Rubin. I live at 2101 52nd Street, Northwest. I'm a professional wildlife ecologist, like a citizen of Olmstead County. And the new information basically that I have is that I'm a new face, a new voice that you may not have heard of before. And also, again, as I stated, I'm a professional wildlife ecologist. I'd also like to attest to the ecological significance of this rookery site. And there may be other people that want to talk, so I'm just going to keep it very brief. And again, as a professional, I'm going to attest to the ecological significance of this site, and I encourage you to, or hope that you vote no on that changing the land designation. Thank you.
Ms. Rubin. Yes, sir.
Well, I'm from Austin, Minnesota, so my name's Larry Dolphin, and 54769 180th Street, and certainly become aware of the issue regarding this large rookery. Uh, um, I believe it's somewhere around 40 nests. They allowed me to visit. The birds were pretty skittish when I was there, but I snuck in, snuck out, and so to speak. But so I represent Austin Audubon and Austin Isaac Waltley, and we're very concerned. We support the resource protection for this upland heron rookery. And these birds travel distances into Mower County and various places, and we just like seeing them, you know, and they're an apex predator. They're one of the top predators, and there's not that many of them. And um, so, and we all want to have a chance to raise the dollars to compensate the landowner for the 30 acres of land so we can preserve this unique rookery somehow, some way. Um, it's part of their community. I look at it as if I was there, it's part of, though that rookery is part of their community. It's, you know, 30, 40 birds, or I don't know how many exact number of birds are there, but it's part of their community. And if you develop this land, it's likely that these birds are going to be gone. So your neighbor, this great blue heron rookery, is going to be gone. And so, and it's part of the neighborhood. And so um, it'd be nice to keep this rookery. These birds disperse all over the place, and we have a chance to see them. And they certainly have a place in the choir as well. We are all part of this planet, and we need to share this planet with all the life that lives on this planet. And we can find a way. I'm sure we can find a way to compensate that landowner for the. We'll find a way to compensate the landowner so that it works for him as well. And I don't know. Did you receive information from John Rust, the Minnesota Division President of Isaac Waltley? So, and I think he's on the Zoom. So, but you know, he had a fairly lengthy email. So, I don't know if you want to read it for everybody else, but anyway, that's just the thought I had. And so, thank you for your time. And I certainly want you to continue the resource protection for the upland heron rookeries. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else with some new information for us?
One more.
One more. That's the, I see he's the first one on the list, so maybe he has the newest information for us?
Yes, and he hasn't spoken here before.
Hello? Okay, here, he's on speakerphone. Okay, please go ahead.
That's the, I see the first one on the list, so maybe he has the newest information.
He's got the delay.
Oh, you have to turn off that, and then you could speak, please. Well,
Okay, how is that? I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm going to turn the speaker back on to see if you can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for this. It's been a little frustrating on my end, trying to break the computer. Hope you can hear me.
He's got to turn it
you
off.
have to close your computer.
I did. Yeah, so as a National Geographic photographer, I have traveled the world many times over, and I've seen habitat loss everywhere. And that does not make it okay for us to take away the habitat as well. And instead, it makes it more important for us to preserve existing habitat. I did go to the rookery myself with my cameras, hoping to make some nice images of this very unique setting of an upland rookery. I'm interested in these other rookeries around trout streams that you mentioned because I do a lot of trout fishing. I haven't seen any to speak of. But after approaching the rookery very slowly and very quietly, which is what I do for a living, I found my stealthful approach was just too much. I was disturbing the birds, and I made a slow retreat. And I had no more right to disturb these birds than a development would. Um, because these birds, I'm sure you have seen them along the rivers and creeks around Rochester and Olmsted County, and these are shy birds. You cannot get close to these birds. They move off, even when they're foraging. And here on the top of a Olmsted County hill is a very unique setting for these birds. And I Googled earlier today upland rookeries, and I really, everything I found was for Rochester at the top. But Michigan had a little bit on it, and there's very little on that subject because there really aren't any. Now, why aren't there any? I have a feeling, at least with these herons in particular, with Olmsted County not really having any natural lakes, that there really was not any suitable habitat for them to nest in. And therefore, they chose this site, this isolated site. And like the previous speaker, I think that we must learn to live in harmony with nature and not always control it and displace it. We're learning this as a country, as people, but we're not acting fast enough. So I only ask you to ask yourself, it's okay for your grandchildren to only see the great blue herons in this area in books and not on walks by the river. So I hope that you will reconsider this. And yes, if you can take this step, I think that I believe very strongly that we'll be able to work something out with the landowner so that it'll be a win-win situation. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Well, I think we have 30 seconds.
Is that okay?
Yes, 30 seconds.
So my name's Leal Segura. I spoke with you all before. At 810 60th Avenue Southwest. Is that better? Okay. I just wanted to inform the discussion a little bit because we've made really great strides since we last met about trying to come up with a solution that recognizes the value of the land for the current landowner, but also recognizes this resource is something that this community cares about. And basically, we've met with all sorts of state leadership, nonprofits about basically donating our portions of land where the rookery sits and getting critical matching grants from the state of Minnesota. And that way the property owner gets reimbursed. But we still preserve this as something that belongs to not just one individual, but to our whole community. And there was a little bit of urgency as we did this because every time we brought this forward in a public forum, the herons got a little bit closer to destruction. So the first time it was recommended that their immediate removal of trees with nests, and the second time in March when we brought it before the Planning Commission, we knew that there were a tree service had been hired to remove the trees. So that's all. I'm not trying to bog it down, but we've really made huge progress towards pursuing this, but we need time. We need time. If you're uncomfortable denying the land use designation change, at least table it so we can get more time to raise these monies and basically create just what you said, a win-win. As I said before, we're willing to put skin in the game too. We're not trying to deny individual property rights, but this is really something that's really meaningful to a lot of us. and we're willing to meet halfway. So forgive me for the impromptu. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, my name is Leslie Hassett. My name is on the list. May I speak briefly, please?
We're
Oh.
out of time.
Yep, that was her talking again. I believe that was.
No.
Who's speaking?
My
Online that are asking to speak.
Well,
yes. My name is on the list. If I could just have a moment, please. I'm Leslie Hassett.
Can you do this in 1 minute?
Yes, I can.
All right.
So what I want to add is to say that I think the county commissioners have an opportunity here to be positive partners in this effort and to work with the group to create a land trust or conservation area that will be available for the public. Maybe we can have some technology like Mayo Clinic has with the Falcon Cam, the Heron Cam. So all of us in the community and people in the future can enjoy it. And like everyone else said, to compensate the landowner as well. But maybe the county can actually partner positively with the group and make this great thing happen. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that I will close the public comment period. Now we've extended it quite a bit.
Madam Chair, you've got one person online that's been asking to speak this whole time. I would suggest that you give him 1 minute. His name is John Rust.
John Rust? Oh, yeah.
1 minute.
Can you do that in 1 minute, Mr. Rust? Because I believe you sent us a long email from the Sierra Club, if I'm right.
I sent you many emails. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for giving me a chance to speak. I'm the president of the Minnesota division of the Isaac Walton League. And I'd like to just go back a little bit and say, we're not opponents in this process. We're partners in this process. We are working together to create the best plan for the community and to protect the local resource, both the Blue Herons and Cascade Creek. I know local municipalities have invested a lot of money in preserving the quality of the water in Cascade Creek. And that road at over a 10% grade will flow right down into Cascade Creek with water, sedimentation, and salt runoff, and pretty much create a flooding issue or contribute to a potential flooding issue. In addition, we have investigated multiple options in terms of how to finance compensating Steve Connolly properly for his rights to sell that land. There's a 2-to-1 match proposal pending at the state legislature with an in-kind donation will generate over $750,000 to compensate the landowner, along with trying to find a compromise away from the rookery, just the front 6 or 7 acres. We're willing to work with the developer to develop that land in a way that's beneficial to both preserving Cascade Creek and the rookery and allowing the development to go through just the front 6 or 7 acres. So that's what we're looking forward to do. And I know this group is passionate about this project and will be able to generate contributions to compensate the landowner for the remaining amount of money that is not an in-kind donation from the DNR Critical Match program. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Rust. Okay, I will now close the public comment period.
Call to order.
And this is Podolsky calling the meeting to order. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, we have a public hearing now on the Olmsted County zoning ordinance text. Let's see, am I missing our consenta? agenda?
No, we
No.
do the public hearings
Public hearing,
first.
couple
The
of
hearing
things.
first.
Send it back.
Olmsted County Zoning Ordinance Text Amendment Number 02020-002 TA regarding shoreland regulations and management. Who will be informing us about that today?
Hello,
Christy, I believe,
Commissioners.
is
This
online.
is Christy Gross, Senior Planner with the Olmsted County Planning Department. I'm going to share my screen.
Hi, Christy.
Okay, so we're here to talk about the Olmsted County Text Amendment O-2020-002 TA for shoreland management and regulations. What is shoreland? So the definition of shoreland is 300 feet or 1,000 feet from the ordinary high water mark of a protected waterway. It's also the landward extent of a mapped floodplain. So in some instances, it could be greater than 300 or 1,000 feet. And the difference between the 300 feet and the 1,000 feet is if it's a river, stream, tributary, it's 300 feet. If it's a lake, it's 1,000. We have many public waters in Olmsted County. This map shows all of those blue lines are DNR designated public waters. The shoreland, to give you a background, the shoreland requirements were created in 1982. These proposed amendments are to bring our requirements into conformance with Minnesota state statutes and Minnesota rules. The way that we found out that our regulations were not up to snuff was when we updated our floodplain regulations in 2017. DNR had reviewed our floodplain shoreland regulations at that time and told us that the shoreland regulations were out of date and asked us to update our plans. So we are getting, we have put a lot of effort into updating our shoreland regulations, and that's what's before you today. Those proposed regulations have been reviewed by Minnesota DNR. By the TCPA, we have been working with them so that they could update their shoreland ordinances in the townships that they our jurisdiction over as well. And Tom Canan with the County Attorney's Office has helped us with this as well. The 4 articles that are changing is Article 1, which is primarily housekeeping. Article 2 is definitions. There's been some definitions added. Article 4, it just corrects some variance findings. There's no substantial changes in Article 4. It's basically, again, housekeeping and just reorganizing some of those variance and conditional use permit findings. Article 9 is the floodplain shoreland ordinance section, and that's where most of the changes are. The changes include we've added tables that define the uses that are permitted, conditionally permitted, and not permitted within the different shoreland designations. We've added figures to help show what the text is requiring as far as height and lowest floor elevation, things like that. And then we also included a new section called planned unit developments. We're calling this shoreland planned unit developments. What this section is anytime you subdivide and the property is designated shoreland, you're required to have meet the requirements of the shoreland PUD standards. And currently how that's handled is DNR has to approve the subdivisions before it gets to the county. So they're checking to make sure that the subdivision meets those density standards that the PUD lays out. By incorporating those PUD standards into our ordinance, it will give us the control over reviewing those subdivisions to make sure that they meet the density threshold. It'll allow us to work with the developers and the landowners ahead of time so that they know what density is to expect. And it just puts DNR back in that referral role of being our assistants rather than our approval agency. These are some of the figures that we included in the definition section. So you can see how a bluff impact zone is measured. It lays out what we're talking about when we're talking about the top of the bluff versus the toe of the bluff, and that the bluff impact zone is everything in between. The height of the building is measured in shoreland at both the front and the back, and the figure just explains how that is measured. And Article 9, here's a figure that was added in Article 9, that is that lowest floor elevation. So it shows where the ordinary high water level is of the lake, and 3 feet above that is what the expected lowest floor elevation is if you're building on a lake that doesn't have floodplain attached. Lake Zumbro does have floodplain, so we don't necessarily apply this standard there. We apply the floodplain standards instead. This is that land use table that we added, and so it clearly shows the different uses that could be permitted or not permitted in the different designations for. This is the lake designation table. So depending on your lake designation, it's either permitted with a P, conditionally permitted with a C, or not permitted with an N. The Planning Advisory Commission held a public hearing on April 15th, and they recommend approval of the ordinance amendments. There was a slight correction in your ordinance changes document. In section 9, we had noticed there was a section that was struck out, and it intended to be moved to a subsection, and it hadn't been added. And so this section is important because it allows for dwellings that can't meet the setback to the ordinary high water mark. It allows them to be closer without a variance depending on the distance of the adjacent properties. This has always been in our ordinance, and we don't want it to not be included in the update. Your role as the county board is to hold the public hearing, suggest any further amendments or corrections. You'll make the final determination on the text amendment and then sign the resolution and shoreland ordinance changes documents. And with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Anyone have questions? Commissioner Tyne?
Hi, this is Mark Tyne. I just noticed in that one chart that guest cottages are non-permitted, is out of hand. So, I mean, there's no place on Lake Zumbo right now where there are guest cottages, but is there a reason that it's not something that somebody could apply for down the road if somebody wanted to put a resort on a body of water in Olmsted County?
It's not something that has been permitted in the county. We felt like that was something that needed some additional conversations of the appropriate location for guest cottages. And so it just didn't seem like the appropriate time to add those as a new use at this time.
So if it's listed as non-permitted and let's say 30 years down the road, there is a good location for one. Let's say right now there's Kings Marina, and it's a public marina, and somebody wants to put some cabins on it, and they want to come forward. There is a process then to remove it?
And there's a difference between guest cottages and resort facilities. And a guest cottage in the shoreland ordinance, in DNR's model ordinance, it allows for all shoreland properties to have a guest cottage. We've viewed that as more as accessory dwelling units. It's not necessarily a bad thing. We just haven't had that conversation of if that's appropriate in our county yet. And so after the comprehensive plan update is done, I think we were planning on having those discussions. And so just because it's not listed now doesn't mean it's never going to be allowed. I think we're going to be talking about that in the future.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sure.
Any other, yes, Commissioner.
I'm sure, Ms. Gross, does the city of Rochester have to comply with Shoreland requirements? And are they, and if so, are they consistent with what we're proposing here?
The city does have shoreland requirements as well. They are also working on updating their zoning ordinance, and we have recommended some changes to their shoreland regulations as well. DNR has also flagged their ordinance as being out of date, and so that there was some updates that needed to happen.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion then.
Hearing, open the
Gotta have a
public
public
Hearing.
hearing.
Sorry.
Open the public hearing.
Let's open the public hearing for the Olmsted County Zoning Ordinance Text Amendment 02020-002 TA regarding shoreline regulations and management. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this matter? Ask 3 times. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this matter? Anyone who wishes to speak on this amendment?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? Public hearing is closed.
We gotta vote.
All in favor? Question before we vote?
You gotta ask for the vote.
Yeah.
To close the public hearing.
Closing the public hearing.
And here's a question over here.
After the,
There's another
we close the
question.
hearing, after the hearing.
All right. I'm going to take a vote to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And Madam Chair, this is just a procedural question. I'm wondering, Ms. Gross, if there was a review of these shoreline ordinances with, builders, with developers, that you mentioned the city. Is there any broader review, or they would have been expected to come forward today?
Again, thank you. That's a great question. Because this was triggered by DNR, and we don't feel that any of these changes are very substantive, meaning we're not being any more restrictive than what the ordinance was requiring before. We haven't had a public engagement other than public hearings.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the Olmsted County Zoning Ordinance Text Amendment, number 02020-002 TA regarding shoreland regulations management. Is there any discussion, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, then. Christy, are you also reporting on the Olmsted County Well Ordinance Text Amendment?
No, I do believe that Ben is here to talk about that.
Okay.
That would be me, ma'am.
Go ahead, Mr. Griffin.
All righty. Madam Chair, honorable board members, Madam Administrator, for the record, my name is Ben Griffith, and I'm your Olmsted County Planning Director. The next item on your agenda this afternoon is item O2021-001 TA, a text amendment to section 3205.03 of Olmsted County's water well and water supply ordinance. I have no PowerPoint presentation for you today and will provide a very brief overview of the text amendment. In late 2019, the county's Environmental Commission took up the study of nitrates in Olmsted County's groundwater. After numerous presentations by county staff and outside experts, the Environmental Commission recommended raising the allowable nitrate levels for new well construction from 1.0 to 3.0 milligrams per liter, or parts per million, in August of last year. Existing drinking wells would not be affected. The Public Health Service Advisory Committee also reviewed the nitrates issue, and in February of this year agreed with county staff and recommended leaving the nitrate level at 1.0 milligrams per liter. Both advisory committees recommended increased public outreach and education for all private well users within Olmsted County. County staff members from various departments provided a detailed presentation of their research and explained the findings of the advisory committees to the county board at a committee of the whole meeting on March 16th. And the board held further discussions at their regular meeting of April 20th, directing staff to initiate the process of amending the specific section of the well ordinance relating to allowable nitrate levels for new well construction. A brief staff report has been prepared for you today, which includes a summary table and a copy of the revised pre-grout homeowner sign-off form for new well construction, as well as both a resolution and ordinance amending the 4 lines of applicable text. If approved today, the ordinance would go into effect on June 1st, which would not retroactively affect existing drinking wells. Commissioner Tyne had contacted planning staff and suggested a few minor revisions, which have been shown in dark red text and provided to the commissioners at their seats this afternoon. Planning staff would caution the commissioners to make sure we don't go beyond what was advertised in our public notices with these revisions or any others, and I would refer to Assistant County Attorney Walls and Commissioner Tyne for clarification and further discussion as we finish. With that, I'll conclude the planning staff presentation, and at this time, planning staff would be glad to answer any questions the commissioners may have, and if there are none, I would ask the chair to officially open the public hearing to hear testimony and comments. Thank you, ma'am. Are there any questions for me, or does Commissioner Tyne want to speak?
Sure, I'll speak. This is Mark Tyne. So on the original ordinance that was in your packet, on number 3,
Commissioner Tyne, would you give us page reference as well, please?
page 90 in the packet.
Page 90, thank you.
All right. So essentially what staff did is they took the old ordinance and they just changed the numbers on it. So you would think that that would all make sense because we've had that ordinance for decades. But if you read number 3, in my mind, it essentially is the opposite of number 2. So number 3 says if a pre-grout nitrate concentration is 3 or greater, the well needs to be drilled or cased deeper. Well, number 2 says if it's 3 or greater but less than 5, and you get the homeowner to sign off, then you could grout the well. So they're saying 2 opposite things. So I went back and forth with staff, and they provided it's essentially saying what we attempted or what we passed at our last meeting about this. And so they adjusted number 3 to just reinforce that if it's between 3 and 5 and you believe that it can get down below 3, staff believes it get below 3 and the homeowner signs off, you can grout that well. So what I think we should be discussing and voting on is the one with red ink that was put on your desk. Staff.
Madam Chair. What you're saying is, and this is Greg Wright, what you're saying is that this is not a substantive change, it's a clarification of the policy so it makes it more understandable. Is that right, Mr. Wells?
That's correct.
Okay.
The public notice, this is Brent Wall speaking, the public notice gave notice that you were going to be looking at paragraphs 1, 2, and 3, which is where these changes are found, and I agree that it's a clarification and not a substantive change otherwise.
Which is called a text amendment.
Correct.
Yes. All right. Let's open the public hearing.
Time for public hearing.
Okay. Do we have to vote on that?
No.
You gotta ask it 3 times.
Ask 3 times. I'm still thinking about the birds. Sorry. Is there anyone who would like to speak on the Olmsted County Well Ordinance text amendment? Is there anyone here who would like to speak on the Olmsted County Well Ordinance text amendment? 3rd time. Anyone here who would like to speak on the Olmsted County Well Ordinance text amendment?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Okay.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Olmsted County Well Ordinance text amendment.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have a comment. I will be voting against this. With as you see, there's a lot of people that are interested in the environment here with the bird thing. And to me, it seems illogical for us to be lowering the standard. I think I gave you my views when we talked about this last time, so I won't burden you with the rest of those views, but I will be voting against this because I don't think we should be loosening the restrictions.
Madam
Any
Chair,
other comment?
I just think for the benefit of the people who are hearing this for the first time, is we have a standard that still exceeds the state guidelines. The state guideline is 10 parts per million. We were the only place in, I believe, the nation that had a 1 part per million guideline. So it's a modification, and it was a debated issue among us. It was a divided vote. It wasn't an easy vote, and so I just for a little clarification of people in the room.
Yeah, and it's like that is, it's a recognition that there are areas in this county that you can no longer drill a well that would meet the old ordinance without drilling to a formation that's 500, 600 feet deep and be so full of iron and manganese that you wouldn't want to drink it. So when you balance that, having 2 or 3 parts per million nitrates is a reasonable exchange. And then I think it should spur us, if we are concerned about the environment, it should spur us to improve land practices so that we don't have nitrate intrusion in those areas of the county.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? So it's been moved and seconded that we approve the Olmsted County Well Ordinance Text Amendment number 0-2021-001TA.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ben?
I just wanted to clarify that the motion is for the ordinance with the changes.
Yes, the text amendments.
Okay, thank you. I just
Yes.
wanted to clarify. Thank you, ma'am.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Um, 2, 5, okay, the motion passes. Thank you. And we'll now move on to the consent agenda. Approve the minutes from the May 4th, 2021 meeting. Award a contract for County Project C-21-25. Approve final payment for SAP 055-632-003. Award a contract for County Project C-21-157. Award contract for 2021 bituminous pavement preservation project. Approve the Greater Zumbro River Watershed Joint Powers Agreement. Approve the right-of-way for plats number 235, 236, 237, and 238. Approve the final payment for SAP 055-605-016. Approve final payment for SAP 055-622-064. Approve final payment for SAP 055-609-019. Accept Transitional Housing Funding Grant Award. Approve Minnesota Safety Grant. Accept the 2021 State of Minnesota Federal Supplemental Boating Safety Patrol Grant Award.
Motion to approve.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Move down to our regular agenda. The first on our agenda is Olmsted County Land Use Plan Amendment number 0-2021-001 LUPA by the applicant International Properties LLC. I'm sorry, I should have practiced that word. Adirondack Morty, on behalf of the owner Stephen Connolly.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the LUPA for this. Is there any discussion about this decision?
I would like
Yes, Madam Chair.
to just for all of us lend perspective on what exactly we're responsible for what we can do as a Board of Commissioners. We certainly appreciate the concerns and the comments raised by all of the Olmsted County residents for this planned amendment and the general development plan. Olmsted County, through all my tenure, has an extremely rigorous process that reviews these types of applications and to complete action on them consistent with the requirements of our land use plan. Requests are vetted through many local, state, federal agencies, neighbors, public hearing is held. The Planning Department has diligently reviewed all of the relevant information regarding this application, has determined and reported to the board that based on the adopted land use policies, this application meets the criteria for the requested plan amendment change. Planning staff has reported that assuming certain conditions will be met, include compliance with all applicable federal and state laws. We have to abide by the laws just like everybody else. County, Rochester Township ordinances, as well as any court orders arising from this action. Additionally, planning staff noted that the owners and developers have followed all the legal standards which the county is responsible to oversee in connection with this. There's lots that will happen after this, but what we are obligated to do is to follow the very rigorous process, evaluate the application from the applicant, bounce it against all of our criteria. We approve, should we approve the application, this would acknowledge the property is generally suitable for suburban style development. But there are several additional steps that must be completed before we turn a shovel of dirt, before the owner or the developer turns a shovel. Following this decision, the matter would be turned over to the Rochester Town Board. They are the planning and regulatory authority for this property. It will be their decision whether to complete a discretionary environmental assessment worksheet to address concerns about the impact to the rookery. And to that end, we support the completion of a discretionary EAW. All the subsequent essential zoning, grading, building code will fall under Rochester Township Authority. Further public comment should be directed to the Township Cooperative Planning Association, who is in charge of this property. We're appreciative of the public input concerning this, and the county has made every effort to ensure that the applicable legal requirements have been followed in the review and the decision on this application. We are bound by the process and laws that determine this function. We can't go against those. So I'm trying to just lend perspective. I understand the passion, and I'm not going to say one way or the other, but we have to follow what the law and what our ordinances that we created as a board tell us that we must do. So it's been moved and seconded, and anybody else, I guess.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Commissioner Cascaden?
Cascaden speaking. I think there are times when you have rules, you have ordinances, you have processes, and then new information comes to you, and you ask yourself, what's best for the community? What's in our long-term interests? How do we meet the expectations of our citizens, and how do we make the decisions that will have the best lasting impact? This is a situation where I don't disagree with my colleague, Commissioner Brown, that we have a process in place and we're halfway through the process when new information became available. But I do think that this is an opportunity, and we can debate motivations, we can debate lots of things, and whether or not prospective interest in purchase and acquiring land and creating a scientific and natural area will actually happen, or whether it's just an aspiration that doesn't have much likelihood of success. In this particular instance, I think if we were to delay this longer, we would have a little more information soon about whether or not there can be the coalition that seems to be forming to purchase the property and create that scientific and natural area. Whether there can be an agreement with the prospective developers about changing their plan so that that natural area could occur or there'd be less impact. And we've debated, we've had our different interpretations of sources of information of what is the likely impact on the rookery or not. But I just think this is one of those times where the best opportunity, the best plan for the community would be to delay our decision, but still meet the letter. We could still do that and meet the letter of the law. So I'm going to be a no vote on this amendment. I don't expect that my views are going to prevail, but I do just want to note that a lot of effort has gone in, spontaneous effort, on the part of citizens to self-organize and to develop alternatives that they believe would create a lasting legacy. And I hope that they succeed. I know that this now goes to Rochester Township. I hope Rochester Township is in a position to listen and to take the time. And there are many more steps to go so that today's decision doesn't preclude any outcome. But I hope in the long run we have a resolution that really is a solution that meets the needs of the property owner, that also preserves a very unique natural asset that we didn't even know we have here in our county. So that's all I have to say, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment?
Mark Tyne. So I share your thoughts on this, and I appreciate that rookery, and I appreciate the passion of the people that have contacted me. I've had a number of phone calls, texts, obviously a ton of emails. We've all received a ton of emails, and there's a great deal of interest in this rookery, and I share that interest. But I am concerned that if we somehow deny this LUPA, that the weight of protecting that rookery would fall on one person's shoulders as compared to the interested people. If we move this forward, I am confident that the process is onerous enough that there will be time for the interested group to put their money where their mouth is, to come forward with a plan that would satisfy the landowner and protect the trees that are involved in that development. So that is why I think we need to move this forward. It's just it's a fairer process to see where this ends.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment?
Madam
Commissioner
Chair.
Wright?
Yeah, Greg Wright. I'm going to vote to support the motion, not because I don't think that the environment is important, but what I believe is that moving it forward sets the stage for those people, the Audubon Society, the Isaac Walton State, to move forward with their plan, to talk to the developers, to raise their money, and this doesn't preclude that the developers at some point can change their plan about how they're going to develop this area. It doesn't bring it to an end, but I do believe that it puts it in a better arena for them to discuss this. And my hope is that the lawsuits that we've heard in public testimony would abate themselves so that the discussion can actually take place on an equal footing. And I'm very hopeful that those discussions will continue at the township level. Thank you.
I would like to say something. I would just, in support of both Commissioner Brown and Commissioner Cascaden, this is a map of all the steps that have to be taken for this to be developed, and we are right here. You can see all the things in blue have to do with zoning and with the township, and they have agreed to have an environmental impact worksheet. So that was very good for me to read and see that. I wish I could vote with my heart. but that is not our role here. We have to follow the rules. There's a rule that we can't deny a property owner development of his or her property as long as they've followed all the rules and steps that they had to take, and they have done that as well. But I will send a check to the Audubon Society if they're going to buy this land and do something different with it. I really hope that happens. But my role here is to vote for the LUPA because the developer has followed all the steps that he needed to do to get to here. And now there's a lot more things to happen before we get down to here. So those were my 2 comments that I wanted to make. Any other discussion?
Just one final point.
Yes.
The ordinances that we have are not just suggestions. We have laws we have to follow.
Mm-hmm.
This is not just something that, because new information came up with this, if nothing changed relative to the law, we are obligated to act. Thank you. Call the question.
Yes. It's been moved and seconded that the Olmsted County Land Use Amendment Plan number 2021-001 LUPA by the applicant International Properties LLC Adirondack Morty on behalf of the owner Stephen Connolly. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those in favor, opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the land use amendment passes. And we have a second part to that. Olmsted County General Development Plan, number 2021-001 GDP by the applicant International Properties LLC Adirondack Morty on behalf of the owner Stephen Connolly.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
The motion passes. Thank you. This was not easy. We now move on to One Olmstead updates and highlights.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I'm Lisa Willis-Elmsteller with Administration, and I'm here representing One Olmstead today. So today we're here to bring a quarterly update. And
Lisa, are you on a microphone? Because I don't think your voice is going through the.
Can you not hear me?
I don't think people in the online will be able to hear you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So for people who are not aware of what One Olmstead is, it is the countywide diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative that grew from a 2017 resolution introducing Olmsted County's commitment to social, health, and racial equity. Today, though, we're going to start by highlighting some recent diversity, equity, and inclusion work that has happened outside of One Olmstead within our wellness team. We have Amy Hebel and Sarah Kelly from the wellness team here with us to share a little bit more.
Well, hello there, Commissioners. Good afternoon. I am Amy Hebel, Wellness Coordinator for Olmsted County. And as Lisa just shared, Sarah and I will be briefly going over some information with you related to how the wellness program is working with One Olmsted and intersecting some of our work with the work that they're doing. So I'm going to share, we have 4 quick slides for you just so that you can get a visual of some of the work that we're doing. So once we get that up and running, we'll be ready to fly. So again, Sarah and I are your wellness team for Olmsted County. And so I wanted to share with you what our wellness model looks like. This is something that we've worked on in the last year. And the reason that this is important is that you can see how the wellness work that we're doing intersects again with One Olmsted and the work that they do related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the wellness model is really looking at the whole person, all the things that are important to us as people to make us well. So if we feel financially secure, and if we feel well emotionally, and if we're taking good care of our relationships with our
in our personal lives and in our professional lives. All of these pieces come together to make us a whole, well person. And in order to do this, there's things that we need to do daily, right? Just to take care of those things. And so when we talk about wellness and diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's really important that we recognize that we are all individuals, and we bring something to the table unique everywhere we go. And so we want to recognize that with the wellness program. And we also want people to grow and learn about how other people are unique and the things that they bring to the table. So when we talk about how do we make that connection between the work that we do with wellness, which we typically think about the physical well-being realm, and One Olmstead with the diversity, equity, and inclusion work, here's where it comes into play for us. We have two things that are happening this year. With our wellness rewards campaign that's tied to our health plan, we are working with employees to earn points, basically. And we want to recognize some of those activities that are happening here on site, not just through our Virgin Pulse platform where people do some online interactions related to well-being, but we want to look at things that are happening here in-house. And so we've created this system called a voucher where a variety of different activities can be done in-house, and if they're addressing, again, any one of those realms of well-being, then they would qualify for points. And so there has been an explosion, if you will, of energy around this concept when it comes to all the work that is being done across the county in different departments related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And because we're looking at whole person, and when you look at that model, there's that cultural piece within the model. When we're having conversations amongst our teams facilitated by a trained facilitator, or we're bringing in speakers, or we're doing specific like online trainings. Those are all things that are helping us to grow as individuals, both professionally and personally. And so we want to recognize that effort in the well-being realm. So we are awarding those types of activities points. So vouchers is one way that we're doing that. And then the right side of the screen shows a screenshot of our Virgin Pulse platform, which again is our online resource for well-being activities for our employees and our spouses. And they very specifically have a category called Embracing Diversity. And I'm sure the font is really small on your screen, but in that Embracing Diversity category, there are 46 different ways that they encourage you as an individual to embrace diversity in your day-to-day life practices. So the one that I have checked for myself, and you can see the green check mark, is bias awareness. That's something that on a daily basis, I try to look at something from somebody else's perspective. The question is, was I aware of that bias today? So, and I do that whether it's here at work, whether it's here at home. I have two teenage boys. I constantly have to look at things through their lens because I'm not a teenage boy, and I just don't understand how their brains work sometimes. So I have to try and see it from their perspective, right? So it's a practice that I try to do every day. And by interacting with our Virgin Pulse platform, it's a way for me to be able to do that, just to create that own personal awareness. So those are two things that we have going on that are part of our larger employee campaign that we do around wellness rewards. But Sarah's going to talk to you about something very specific that we're bringing to the forefront with our employees that's very exciting.
Amy, this is Commissioner Podolsky. I just have a question. Is there any connection between this and the Know Your Numbers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So the Know Your Numbers is a piece of the wellness rewards. So we are trying to, again, when we talk about expanding that vision of what well-being is, Know Your Numbers is very focused on the physical health. And we want to encourage people to be physically well, but we want people to also look at any of those other realms of well-being and work on those areas that resonate for them. They feel like working. So Know Your Numbers is a piece of it, but there's a whole lot more to it now.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll pass it off to Sarah and she can talk about what we've got coming up.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. So we are partnering with One Olmstead on an initiative here. Historically, weight loss programs have really focused a lot on the achievement of a certain body type, a certain body size specifically. But we know through decades of weight loss research that weight is largely something not completely within our control. It can be affected by genetics and medical conditions, age, socioeconomic status, education level, so many things. And the bottom line is we are not all meant to be the same size. However, people in larger bodies experience discrimination in employment and healthcare, in society in general. And this can lead to poor health outcomes and even weight gain. So we, as a wellness program, we want to promote wellness and health at all sizes and respect for everyone, regardless of body size. So one of the things that we are doing, if you want to switch the slide, next slide, to help promote this important issue and not often talked about area of diversity inclusivity is body size. So we are bringing in a speaker this summer. Her name is Reagan Chastain, and she's an author and a thought leader, world-renowned speaker on body image. And so she's going to do 2 presentations this summer, and we are encouraging all employees to sign up and help raise awareness of this important issue.
Okay, so that kind of concludes our update on how, again, the well-being program is intersecting with the work that One Olmsted is doing in ways that you would normally think of, and then again in this, wellness at every size concept as well. So if you have questions, we'd be happy to answer them, or we can pass it back to Lisa.
Any questions for Amy or Sarah before we move on? Okay, great. Thank you, Amy and Sarah. It's been really fun to get to partner with the wellness team and dream up these ideas that we haven't thought about before in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Next up, the One Olmsted update for you. I'm really excited to introduce the person who's going to provide this information today. Her name is Becky Schumann. And we had the really good fortune in 2020 of getting her as an intern specifically for the One Olmsted project team. So Becky came in and worked really hard. She established common language for us. She started writing articles for our fellow colleagues to read in our weekly digest. She basically did anything and everything we asked, including facilitating focus groups with our employees. And we felt it was really important to find out what our employees think. Do they think we have an inclusive workforce? What are their experiences like? And so today, Becky is here now as the new risk management coordinator in human resources. She is now a full-time employee, so super happy we got her. And she's here to share the results of the focus groups that she facilitated. Becky.
Thank you, Lisa. And I always appreciate that you have such warm things to say about me, because it goes both ways. So good afternoon, commissioners. I'm very excited to be here to talk about this. Just to give you a little bit of background while I'm loading my presentation, I'm in a graduate program right now that is industrial and organizational psychology, and the school that I'm in has a social justice angle and focus to it. So that's where my social justice practicum that I got looking for an internship where I could do something in diversity, equity, and inclusion, because I didn't have a lot of experience in that, and I really wanted to dive into that. So I really hit the jackpot with Olmsted County when I reached out to human resources to see if that was something we could do. So I'm very excited to talk about this today. I wanted to just also mention that this is a very condensed version. My original presentation is actually quite lengthy and very emotional, so I condensed it down for all of you to try to be a high-level overview, but you'll get my report so you can read through everything in detail when you're at that, or once you have the report. So we're going to try to cover things quickly at a high level today, just to kind of save some time. So just a quick little blurb about methodology, because everybody asked me about this. So we did focus groups in Q4 of 2020. And I also allowed people to, I emailed out all of the questions so people could email back responses to the questions as well if they didn't feel comfortable sharing in an open focus group environment. So all of these questions were open-ended questions where they could just provide free text responses. So that was a lot of data to sort through when you have just narrative responses from staff. So what I ended up doing was I used my research methodology the course I'd just taken, and I took all the responses to the questions and I codified them according to shared sentiment. So when I asked these questions and I got, everybody can provide a lot of different responses using different language, I codified those responses into shared sentiments, and then I separated them into themes. And then I reported the themes in order of frequency. So I'll kind of explain that once we get to the questions so that as you see the slide, you understand what you're looking at. So when we offered this, I just wanted to say we got over 300 responses. I can't say for sure because I think we had some overlap between live focus groups and email responses. But in order to maintain confidentiality, I tried to, as soon as I would get email responses, I would delete the email so I didn't have any names or departments or anything associated with them, because I really wanted everybody to feel comfortable sharing exactly where they were at and their honest, authentic thoughts and feelings about where we are in the county. So I put together, once I did all of that, codified all my responses and themes, put it into a report. And so all the questions were organized around 5 main focus areas for discussion, and that included inclusion, respect, belonging, empowerment, and living our values. So as we go through the questions next, they'll be separated into those main 5 buckets. And then at the end of my report, I provided recommendations for action based on the findings that we identified. So the first bucket was inclusion. So these questions focused around asking employees, do you feel Olmsted County is a welcoming and a safe workplace? So the next couple slides will focus on that. So here again, so I just want to go back over. So these bulleted responses are the shared sentiment. So everything is listed in order of frequency. So the shared sentiment at the very top is the one that was recorded most frequently. So you'll see there's different phrases because I had to put them together because not everybody answered exactly the same way. So I put like statements and responses together into shared sentiments. So for the most part, when I asked the question, in what ways is Olmsted County welcoming and inclusive, most people responded with this shared sentiment that in general, Olmsted County staff are nice people with good intentions. So what that told me was that we have good intent. We may not always have a good impact, but our intent is good. So that's the sentiment I wanted to share for the most part on this slide. And again, we're going to move through these quickly. You can read through the entire report later because it would take way too long to go through all of the different themes that were reported. So the next question was, in what ways is Olmsted County not welcoming? And by far, these 2 responses were kind of themes that were brought forward in a lot of the different questions asked. We have a lack of diversity in our staff. There's too many white men in leadership positions followed by white women. And that rang through in a lot of different responses throughout the different questions that we went through. Secondary to that, this was also very notable, that exclusionary behaviors are tolerated and not addressed by managers. So we have to remember here that these are employee perceptions. You may be listening to this thinking, well, that's not true. I don't think that's accurate. This is employee perception. So if it's not true, then we have an opportunity to re-engage our staff with different communication. And if it is true, then we have an opportunity to improve our process and our protocol. So just keep remembering that as we go through all these questions, all of this is based on a perception by those answering these questions. So the exclusionary behaviors, a lot of the other sentiments reported were that there's kind of an inconsistent expectation of inclusion. So some people have very inclusive teams and other teams are not so inclusive. And then others, there's actual toxic personalities in the workforce that are not adequately addressed. So we don't have that consistency that staff are looking for. The next question asks, what barriers to establishing an inclusive environment exist? And by and large, the top one is that we have a lack of diversity in upper management. So again, this is what rings through a lot of the questions. Secondary to that is communication. And here we see that same response again about exclusionary behaviors are tolerated and not addressed. They're looking for more humility and sacrifice from leadership. So communication is important, and it might just be that we need to work with our supervisors on how do you address some of those things. We all know that DEI conversations are sometimes hard to have, And if we haven't maybe equipped our supervisors with the toolbox needed to have some of those bold and inclusive conversations yet, that might be why we're hearing that perception from our staff. And then finally, staff reported a lack of understanding how to be inclusive. It sounds like staff don't know, other than asking somebody to lunch or asking somebody to go on a walk, what does everyday inclusive actions look like? And so we have an opportunity to provide some real world everyday work activities that would be modeling inclusive behaviors. And then finally, what would you like to see changed? And just as we've already reported, leadership. Leadership should reflect the community. They're looking, again, for leadership to be 20% minority representation. So that lack of diversity in management. It was also reported quite a bit about kind of inconsistent hiring practices. They wanted to see more standardization and oversight with the selection process and more of a values consideration when they're doing interviews. The third most reported sentiment was around DEI, kind of having an actionable plan. And again, you have to remember, this was done at the end of last year, before the high fives were rolled out, before we had a lot more concrete discussion about how to incorporate DEI into our daily work lives. So I think that's a function of the timing of this focus group. And then finally, support. For staff who need to take a mental health leave due to factors in the job, which of course you have to remember, this was heavy during COVID, and we had a lot of staff who were trying to respond to the community where we had a lot of need, and there was just so much we could do for them. But also new hires that were hired during the while we've been doing remote work have struggled to make some of those connections and feel like they have a true sense of belonging. So that was also reported. Then the next bucket is all about respect. Do employees feel that their individual differences are recognized and valued? So do they have something unique about them that is respected by their coworkers? So that first question, do you feel that your unique attributes, traits, characteristics, and skills are valued at work? And most people said yes. The notable comment that I highlighted here was that there's some staff who feel underutilized and not appreciated. So there is enough of a sentiment reported that staff have skills and capabilities that aren't utilized. And one of the other things that's been reported is that we're so siloed in the county sometimes. So this really would give us an opportunity to tap into that potential, find ways to collaborate with departments outside of our home department, and find different ways for people to contribute in meaningful ways so that they feel that they're being valued even outside of their individual team. And then, do you feel comfortable being yourself at work? And most people said yes. Now, there are, of course, enough responses where people felt that it depends on who's in the room. And again, some of that is comfort level. So, you know, you're more comfortable with your immediate team where they know you. You get to know each other better. So you're less worried about disappointing somebody, you know, in your immediate team. So some people have reported that they tone their personality down to fit in. Or that people outside of their immediate work group, they don't necessarily feel that same comfort level. And then what extent do you feel you can disclose your whole identity to your colleagues? And of course, again, remember the time that we did this focus groups was right after the election, and, you know, COVID protocols are in place. I can't tell you how many, a huge percentage of responses were that, yes, I can be myself most of the time, except when it comes to politics and religion. Everybody universally agrees that that's one of those things that you just cannot reveal. That's so polarizing. It never ends in a good conversation. So I just thought it was interesting that during the time of the focus groups, that was the most frequently recorded response. And then the next bucket is all about belonging. Do employees feel essential? Like they provide something unique to that work group that wouldn't be the same without their presence there. And most people, by and large, said yes, they feel valued. Sometimes within their team, but not outside their team. But most people within the county do feel like they're essential and that they're valued by their manager and their team. So that was good information to get. And when we asked if they ever felt left out at work when engaging in work activities or socially, again, because of the timing of the focus groups, this was this was a difficult question to gauge because most people reported that the pandemic has severely limited those activities, so it was hard for them to answer at that time. But interestingly, some of our departments have more shift work where they're not able to come to countywide events, and that was reported. I had one focus group just for that group, and they did reply with that response that they can't attend the events, and it would be nice if there were ways to recognize them differently. So I do recognize that there is an effort to do that with the Employee Recognition Committee. I know we made an effort to make sure that their breakfast was delivered to them for those that were on the shift work. So I think we're making progress in that realm. It's just a feeling of sometimes where they kind of feel left out. So that was notable from a couple of those departments. And then our empowerment bucket. Do employees feel empowered to bring their best selves to work? And do we offer the kind of benefits and policies that bring out the best in those people? So this question was, have you faced obstacles in your career path that maybe not everybody else would face? And so this was kind of gearing towards some discrimination. And most people said no, but I wanted to highlight the notable comment that without advocacy from existing leaders, this person reported that she wouldn't have gotten a promotion due to bias, patronization, hierarchical assumptions, and administrative culture, which that's a lot to take in. I understand that. So just to note that there is that perception out there. So I thought it was important enough to highlight just as a note. And then what can Olmsted County do to better support you? And this was really interesting because we asked this question during COVID. That was by far probably the most talked about was a one-size approach to work doesn't fit us anymore. That when we talk about all employees, having one policy for what is designated as work hours or work arrangements, that just doesn't work for all staff. We need it to be flexible, and we need, whether it's work hours or work from anywhere or those kind of things. They want more choice. They want more flexibility in those things to make it work for them and for the county. And then another notable comment was that they wanted more vertical movement. So if you're not interested in becoming a people manager, there's a perception that there's nowhere to go. So that's maybe something that we could address at some point as well. And then making it easier for employees to balance work and life without having to ask for it. There's still that badge of honor of working long hours, being stressed out, and getting too little sleep, which we really need to, as an organization, make sure that we re-communicate that that's not the model of work that we are advocating here. And then the last bucket was all about living our values. Do employees see evidence of inclusive leadership within the organization? And is injustice called out, or do we just stand back and just, kind of check out of the situation because it's too uncomfortable to deal with? So when we asked the question, can you identify people similar to yourself in leadership positions? A majority of our staff said no, that there's no managers that are my age within the county, no managers that physically look like me, no one with military leadership, and that we need more diverse leaders. So again, this theme kind of kept coming up throughout all the different questions. So I thought that was interesting to note. And then, have you faced or witnessed prejudice or discrimination in the work setting? And this was a hard thing. Some of these got really, really difficult conversations to have in the live setting. And what I found was interesting is that overwhelmingly people reported words more frequently than actions. So microaggressions are pervasive and tokenism is common. Those two things really stood out for me and were kind of hard for me to take that feedback in just because I haven't been here long enough to see that, and I haven't seen it, but that's something that I think those are two areas where we definitely have opportunities for improvement within the county. And I know Lisa and I have talked about different trainings on microaggressions too, but that's something that we definitely want to address. And then this last slide is which characteristics, traits, contributions, or behaviors are most valued and rewarded in Olmsted County? And interestingly, the most frequent response was being white and male. And then secondary to that was being hardworking, longevity with the county, then collaboration, which I'm glad to see one of our values show up on the list, then customer service, then continuous improvement, being tech savvy. And then the next one down, the second from the bottom, which is so heartbreaking, was integrity, because I know that that's also a value. So why that fell so low on the list is a little troubling to me. I would like to see that higher on the list, because I certainly know that that's important, that it is a value that we hold dear here. So I'm hoping that we can maybe do some work to improve communication around those values as well. And then finally, we asked employees to describe a typical leader in Olmsted County. And this was what they said. It's a male, Caucasian, lots of seniority, Midwest grown, highly educated, dressed to impress, definitely straight, and focused on continuous improvement. So there was a perception that overwhelmingly came through in my questions that leaders were promoted due to seniority versus their ability to manage people. So again, this is employee perception. So if you are hearing this and you don't feel good about it or you disagree, you have to remember this is employee perception. So we have an opportunity to either change the narrative or change whatever people are upset about. So I just wanted to give that high level overview. I know that was quick, and again, this is a very in-depth report. You can read at your leisure when we send it out. I just wanted to give an opportunity to kind of cover some of the high level things that we talked about in focus groups. And there was when we presented this to One Olmsted, there was a desire to see this kind of work done on an annual basis, so we can kind of put some markers for improvement in there and gauge kind of how we're doing. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to fire away. I'm happy to answer.
Any
Thank
questions?
you.
No.
Thanks.
I'll wait to read the report. But this is very good. This is a great intro. It felt to me like some of the things you summarized were sort of anecdotal. I had an urge to kind of delve deeper and think, well, where did that come from? Because it seemed like it couldn't have been a couple of them are like, how could several people have said that? And I know you said that you were doing a synopsis, but there's a few in there that makes my wheel spin. I guess
Makes me sad. Some people feel that way.
That's why I want to wait for the whole report.
Yes, and so again, to reiterate, the notable comments that I wrote were not ones that were reported by tons and tons of people. There was notable, like that response was notable, and that's why it included in there as an outlier. So it's to consider it, but to remember that this is not, this isn't in a hierarchy of like we got tons of these responses.
So what distinguished the notable ones? How did we?
That was a response where somebody.
I know what it means, but in your report, it didn't. These were all notables rather than trends?
No, at the very bottom of each slide, I had a notation that said notable comments. So that was a comment that I felt was important to highlight, but it came from like 1 or 2 people versus like 20 or 30 people.
Heidi?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioners, I just want to, it is a little bit hard to read. I read some of the data, I read the report ahead of time, and I know it feels a little bit harsh, but I think the important thing to take away from this is that we are asking, we're listening to our staff. It doesn't mean that everybody feels this way, and it doesn't mean that everybody was treated poorly or sees things the same way. I think the important thing to remember is that we're working on this and we are listening to staff. So not to take any particular comment, any particular one comment too seriously, but to see it in the context of all the work of One Olmsted, that we're moving forward. And part of that is for me and for all of us feeling a little bit uncomfortable when we read some of the comments and think, we all have, I have some of those reactions, but I know that it's still the right thing for us to be asking and probing with staff for things that I don't see. So,
yeah. This is Mark. I'll try to do it right. As I think it's brave of us to ask these questions, and when you're going to ask somebody a question like that, you're going to get those responses.
Yeah.
And I think what Julian pointed out is that we have almost a 95% retention rate when you take away retirement. So despite all this, we're doing something right. We're a place people want to work.
Absolutely.
So this is sort of a philosophical question of not to the survey, but to the times. and that is, I find it hard to define microaggressions because it feels to me like it's in the eye of the beholder, or based on your own interpretation or your own experience. So, you know,
Kind of feel that was a microaggression.
yeah, exactly. You know,
Ouch. Parents are feeling it big time.
I just struggle with trying to understand that because we have a larger, constant cultural comment about microaggressions and also about an expectation we should never be uncomfortable. At the same time, we are saying all of us white people need to be uncomfortable for a while to get into understanding where we've come as a nation and why race is such a big issue right now. So it's kind of like a microaggression means you did something that made me uncomfortable. And I don't necessarily know what that is. So this is, maybe I better go take the training.
Yeah, well, I think it's a good comment for us because it helps us understand what else we can provide more resources on or offer to explore more deeply. Again, I would say no matter how this made you feel, the important thing is that we're pushing forward and we're still asking the questions and we're comfortable feeling uncomfortable. If that makes any sense at all, and I think that's the important takeaway here.
Well, nothing, I've never known anyone to change unless they are uncomfortable.
True, too. Yeah.
Right. Any more comments? So,
Welcome to Olmsted County, Rebecca.
I also just wanted to remind everybody that I asked the hard questions, right? I didn't ask, tell me what makes Olmsted County so great. That's not what we were trying to get at. So I asked a lot of the questions, we're asking them to talk about hard things anyway. So it wasn't a survey to find out, everything that everybody loves about the county. It was to talk about the things that they don't normally talk about, that they don't like, or that makes them feel uncomfortable. So in a way, it's meant to highlight the things that are, things that we can work on, not things that we can celebrate.
That's
so
a good point.
yes.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
I'll bet my name came up a few times.
You know, I'm tempted to say.
Oh, careful,
Song is
careful,
about you.
careful.
Microaggression, Sheila.
Careful.
We don't have that.
Oh, I did it again. Oh.
Remind them
Just waiting
how
for
often
me.
it's coming up.
Yeah. Chair Podolsky, before we move on to our last item, I just wanted to remind the commissioners that One Olmsted will continue to give quarterly updates to the board so that you know what we're working on and can help us assess if we're going in the right direction and if we're making good progress.
And
Thank you.
if I may just add that if there are particular areas that you want to hear about within One Olmsted, if there's particular topics, programs, aspects, data that you want to hear about, just let Lisa know and we can work that into some future update.
And let's not put it after a big lupa vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, we knew that this one might be a little bit.
You never know when that stuff comes around.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, thank you. I know that you're working diligently on this and we are all learning things maybe that we didn't want to know. That's okay.
Yes.
A COVID-19 update.
Madam Chair, before Graham pops on, let me just say this is likely your last regularly scheduled. I know you're going to be really sad and disappointed about that, and I don't mean that Graham won't take that as anything offensive either. He's done a great job.
Screen, are we?
I think this will be your last regularly scheduled board meeting update on COVID. I also, let me just take a moment to say that this is also your last board meeting before the indoor governor's orders restrictions expire. That means that starting at our next board meeting, we're likely to have all of our staff who are presenting to you in person because we'll no longer have the problems of trying to space everybody out. And I really appreciate that you've tolerated and done a good job of hanging in there with us for all of the presentations it's hard. It's hard to read the speaker. It's hard for the speaker to read all of your faces and So we're all looking forward to getting back to that next
I,
time.
for one, say that is an excellent announcement. Fully endorse. See that.
Hey, Mr. Sunburn.
Madam Chair, we get clarification of what is allowed and isn't allowed for remote. We were having a little partial conversation about that
Sure.
earlier. Committee meetings, advisory boards, some
Yep.
of us here, some of us gone, that kind of thing.
Madam Chair, if I could just, I'll give you a couple of points. Until that indoor, until the emergency order expires, which is set for May 28th. Pete, tell me I'm right on my date there.
Yeah, for this last order, not necessarily the declaration, though, that would be later, my understanding.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, Brent's the one who will know more than Pete. I think when that expires, then you are required to be in person. But we don't know exactly when that's going to expire yet. Will it be continued or not? And we also, because we've been talking about this internally, okay, what does that mean when it's convenient to be on teams, for some of the committees or so forth. So Brent is actually, probably Brent and Lisa together, but Brent's going to lead a committee of the whole. Is that what we decided? No, I think we put it on regular agenda. Anyway, on the second meeting in June, he's going to come and give you a full update, knowing that we have all these questions and also that there are some associated rules in the legislature right now that are being maybe will change as a result of everything that we all have been through in the last year. So we're keeping our eyes on that really closely. Larger update and discussion, possibly with some decisions on your part coming to the second meeting in June.
Okay. Hey,
Graham.
Briggs, we're gonna all pitch in and buy you a hat.
Or at least sunscreen.
Or sunscreen. I don't know, maybe it's just the lighting, but if my face was that pink, I would be whining.
Has he got a pink face? Where is he? Let's see.
Yeah, as we discussed in committee this morning, I did do quite a bit of planting in my garden, mowed the lawn, got outside, which I will pay the short-term price with a little bit of sun exposure for that. I did live in Phoenix for 20 years. I feel like I should be able to get outside for a day here and not get too burnt. But then I am reminded I'm English and Norwegian, so
In Phoenix, it's a dry sun.
So you're not contagious, right? We're seeing you're not.
No, we do fever checks over here, so we should be good to go as far as that.
Yeah.
But thank you, Madam Chair, for the chance to give you an update, in which, as Heidi mentioned, will likely be the last one. I would love a chance to come speak to you in person, just to give you a wrap up here, just so we can end this pandemic the way that we started it. But it feels like part of the reason why we're winding down now and starting to demobilize people and probably don't need to have an update at every board meeting is because we are seeing this pandemic end here locally. We've still got some work ahead. It doesn't mean we're there yet, but we are moving to the end of this event now, which is just great to see. So real quick, here's our latest epidemiological curve. Everybody's familiar with this now. We can see that our cases are continuing to trend down after we did see a little ripple here in Olmsted County. This was less intense than what we saw at the state level and much, much less intense compared to Michigan or the UK or some other areas that saw the emergence of this B117 strain. But I think vaccination has protected us from a lot of the activity that some others have seen. So when we look at our vaccination rates now, today, instead of playing the 16 and over, we're a little bit over 75% of those 16 and over have had at least a dose of vaccine. So we've already met the governor's recommendations, the federal recommendations. But I wanted to show, when we look at everyone, including those who can't get vaccinated yet, it's almost 92,000 people now have received at least a dose. It's about 60% of our population now has received a dose of vaccine, and about 54% of the population is fully vaccinated. And we can see we're over 90% at 65 plus. The 50 to 64-year-olds are at 3 out of 4 individuals in the county have had at least a dose of vaccine. So We've seen all these numbers before, but I think that is directly contributing to these decreasing rates that we're seeing in these populations that are highly vaccinated now. I think we are seeing some concern here, though. Overall, you can see the week of April 4th, we peaked in the number of doses that were administered in Olmsted County at a little bit under 12,000. If we now go forward to the weeks of May 2nd and May 9th, we're under 6,000. So we've decreased close to 50% of the number of shots that are being given a week here in Olmsted County as both the supply increases and the demand decreases. So I think I mentioned recently that doing 5,000 shots a month ago was actually easier than trying to do 100 now. It feels like, as we're doing a lot of education and outreach and talking to the community about places where we can get out into the community and out of the office to vaccinate people. We do have a few bits of big, very significant news, I think. Number one being that the Pfizer COVID vaccine has now been approved for 12 to 15-year-olds through emergency use. So everyone 12 years and older now in Olmsted County is eligible for vaccine. We have plenty of vaccine for people. Parents of 12 to 15-year-olds can make appointments with either their medical providers or some pharmacies have Pfizer vaccine and are providing it. And Olmsted County Public Health will be offering vaccine for 12 to 15-year-olds specifically on May 20th, and then during future vaccine clinics that we'll be doing here through the health department. In a second piece of major news, really, this is something that kind of caught us a little bit off guard, but this is a moment that we've been waiting for, I think, since the start of the pandemic, is this day where we can say that we can take our masks off. And so after reviewing some recent studies, the CDC did update their guidance in the last week. Governor Walz followed suit and has removed the mask mandate for the state of Minnesota. Now, at the local level, local jurisdictions or local businesses can require their staff or their customers to wear masks on the premises. But at least as far as a requirement at the state level goes, that has now gone away for those that are vaccinated. Now, we'd still recommend people that aren't vaccinated wear a mask, but that's not being enforced. We don't have plans at the health department to do enforcement around that or anything. So I think what we lean on here is the fact that we do have 75% of the people that can get vaccine here have gotten it, and we're seeing quickly decreasing rates now associated with the vaccination efforts that we've been making. So to end here with our key metrics, as we've done for about a year and a half now, it seems, our cases are on the verge of going to that green color here. We're at 7.6 cases per 100,000. Remember, as a state, we're trying to shoot for 5 cases per 100,000 on a weekly rolling average. Our percent of positive tests is down to 5.1%, so we're just a tick away from moving that into the green area. Our R value is down to 0.84, so it's telling us our outbreak is slowing down here locally. We're down to 6 residents are hospitalized right now, with 0 in the ICU, which is something that we've rarely seen throughout the pandemic. We did add 1 death, unfortunately, since my last update, so we are up to 99 deaths now in Olmsted County. And that for today wraps up my update, unless there are questions from the commissioners.
Yeah, I have a question.
Commissioner
Chair?
Wright.
Yeah, this is Greg Wright. I've been reading that across the nation that the middle school age students are very enthusiastic about getting their vaccination. Is that true in Olmsted County as well?
My guess is that we're going to see decent uptake. A lot of it relies on the parents, I think, in this situation. I think the first number that I heard during a regional meeting yesterday was there was about 2,000 12 to 15-year-olds have been vaccinated through the first weekend. We think in Olmsted County there's about 8,000 12 to 15-year-olds. So if we consider the region, it's going to be a little bit higher than that. But so far we are seeing uptake. I wouldn't be surprised if it's similar to what we saw with the 16 and 17-year-olds, where there's a really quick increase up to about 50%, and then a slower increase up to about that 60% level, and then slows down after that. We've also got the issue, I think, here with schools are ending. So schools are a great place to go to to give shots to kids, but we know already that the second doses wouldn't be able to be administered during the school year at least. So that's a little bit more of a challenge for us too.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I think we are #1, maybe after Cook County, in terms of immunization rates. And Cook County only has about 6,500 people. So the fact that our partnerships and our public health folks have done such a fabulous job of getting so many of our residents immunized, it's just been a remarkable year for public health. And I know we're going to have a time to commemorate their strong work and our partners in July. But I just can't resist taking a moment to just give you a few kudos today, Mr. Graham and others who might still be on the call, because it's just been a remarkable experience. And so I do hope, as I asked this morning, I hope that we do your hot wash and learn from this and can apply it to our partnerships. I'm hearing other things are happening in terms of what we've learned of how we do outreach to underserved populations or hard to reach populations. And I just think there's been a lot of learning, but people throughout the county, whether it's continuous operations or the emergency operations, have really stepped up and done a fabulous job. And having, I just think we should be really proud of our staff. I think they've done a great job. So,
Madam Chair?
done.
Yes.
May I just add a couple of details to the event that Commissioner Cascade mentioned for the benefit of our favorite reporter here, just in case he hasn't heard that yet. We will be hosting a recognition event for staff who have been involved and also for all of the partners. All of our staff have really emphasized that this remarkable response, which I think we can and should take credit for, couldn't have been done just with public health. Of course, we want to make sure to recognize all the community partners, and that will be July 6th. Hope I got the date right, Lisa. Yes, that's following the board meeting that day, and we'll have a recognition and a reception lunch to follow at Graham Park, which I think is fitting since that was such a hub of activity for the first, 8 months of this pandemic. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, for those of us who got to go to the employee appreciation breakfast, that was really kind of a fun event, and people seemed to really, really like it. You know, the breakfast burrito drive-through. Whoever thought of that it seemed to be well attended and appreciated. It was fun to see people drive up and ask for, like, I need 15 to go. I'm bringing it back to the office, so it was fun.
Thank you.
And are there any other board committee reports?
Not for me.
No? Okay, so just take a deep breath, because I'm going to do my quote. Put your phones down and just shut your eyes.
Fall asleep.
You can do that too.
It's not a good
So this is from the 23rd Poet Laureate of the United States, Joy Harjo. This is about a road trip, which we have one coming up. It's possible to understand the world from studying a leaf. You can comprehend the laws of aerodynamics, mathematics, poetry, and biology through the complex beauty of such a perfect structure. It's also possible to travel the globe and not learn anything. Though we have instructions and a map buried in our hearts when we enter this world, nothing prepares us for the abrupt shift to the breathing realm. So on every journey, even when unexpected turns arise, hare and rookeries included, somewhere inside us, we will find instructions that will help us navigate and breathe through the next steps.
I think you inserted something there.
She is just prescient.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.